gosh.
We are live.
We're already recording. All right, everybody behave yourselves. Don't say anything weird while the people are
All right. All right.
All right, fine.
I'll do my best.
Okay, lovely people, as you start coming in, will you tell us where you're coming from? It's going to be a lot of fun to see.
Oh yeah, people in the chat. Yes.
Yes,
yay.
yes, yes. I mean, we can start the train. So I am in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
Oh, yay. How nice.
It's ideal.
Oh, yeah.
And I am just down the road in Richmond, Virginia.
Amazing.
Okay, VA.
I am in California, like between Sacramento and South Lake. So east of Sacramento in the hills. Nobody's going to know where it is. So
Well, that's
Sacramento area.
Valley.
Yeah, Northern California.
So jelly.
So Tara, you're just hanging out with us in your afternoon, and meanwhile,
Pretty much.
Destiny and I are going to go to sleep after this.
Yes.
I will
I feel like
too,
it's been
but
night now for 8 hours.
Yeah.
What is this?
it's like pitch black here by 5:30 already.
I
I
know.
think that's just more time to be cozy and reading. That's what I think
This is true.
about it.
Sure. Sure. We'll give it to you. We'll give it to you. Our queen of darkness.
Yeah.
Uh,
Last night, so I why am I telling this story when people are showing up to this
I
thing?
love it. I love
Perfect.
it. While you do that, I will get out my wonderful mood light. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. You
That's
need that.
nice.
Oh my God. That is fancy.
So a couple years ago, my brother bought my parents like a frame TV. Does anyone in
Yes.
chat know what a
Yes.
frame TV is?
I know what it is. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So they liked it, but they had trouble seeing it. Like it was not big enough for them.
Okay.
Okay. So they had to get a new TV. So they gave me their old TV. And listen, there's nothing I hate to shop more for than electronics. So my TV was 17 years old.
Oh,
Whoa.
wow.
Was it a
I mean,
flat screen?
I was like, what's the problem? It's a flat screen. Like
Oh.
it works, right? So we put this new TV up, and last night we turned it on and watched the Great British, like it was like, 6 o'clock at night, so it was already dark. So we watched the Great British Baking Show. I've never seen anything like this. Like I'm like, why does everything look so realistic?
Oh my God.
Listen, TV technology
From
has
17
really
years
changed.
ago.
Kate finally learned what HD is.
Like, okay.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
So I'm just gonna go sit in the darkness and watch my new TV.
In addition to getting Tara's book, everybody please get Kate's book so that this
Anyway.
Christmas we'll treat her nicely. I feel like we're reaching critical mass, and
Okay.
so for that reason, I will get us started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your evening plan. My name is Destiny. I work at City Bookshop in Washington, D.C. If you do not already have a copy of the co-op, you can make sure to order that from City Bookshop or your local indie. And I would just like to say that if you have questions for either of our authors today, to please put them in the Q&A box. It should be right on the bottom of your screen so that Kate will be able to find your questions, because if you put them in the chat, they're just going to disappear. And we don't want that for you. So Q&A in the Q&A box, and adulation and praise and all the love can go in the webinar chat. Say that again.
So please tell us our hair looks nice. We've already,
you know what? And
I forgot to brush mine.
That is the perfect segue, actually, because I was going to introduce you all. And so I would just say perfect hair twins is who we have today. Look at that. It's like you're reading their book and then you look at the author picture and you're like, this is not fair. This is like kind of feels like they got it all. Doesn't feel right. But we're going to go ahead with Kate Clayborn's intro. She is the critically acclaimed author of contemporary romance novels. Her work has been featured in numerous publications, including the New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'd be here all day. By day, she works in education. Shout out to our educators out here. And by night, and sometimes by very early morning, she writes contemporary romances about smart, strong, modern heroines who face the world alongside true friends and complicated families. Oh my gosh. Okay. Huge round of applause for Kate Clayborn, best hair twin #1. And without further ado, Tarah DeWitt writes character-driven romances filled with laughter and big feelings. She loves stories centered around perfectly imperfect characters, especially those with just enough trauma to keep them funny, without ever being forcefully cavalier. Oh my gosh, who's writing these bios? This is absurd.
Every time I hear about it.
She's the national best-selling author of Savor It, The Co-op, and Funny Feelings, with plenty more to come. And if you follow her on Insta, you probably have seen. So please join me in giving a huge round of applause to Tarah DeWitt, the author of The Co-op, which is out mañana.
Tomorrow. Can't believe it.
This is where I disappear. So have so much fun.
I mean, don't disappear too much, Desi.
Okay. All right. Just like disappear light.
Don't forget to remind me to turn to questions.
I got you.
Oh my gosh. Well, hi, everybody. Hi, everybody in the chat. It's so wonderful to be here. I don't know about you all in the chat, but I feel like I really needed this tonight. And I'm very happy to be here with my friend Tarah, who I think is just such a brilliant and beautiful writer. So thank you all for joining us. Hi, Tarah.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this with me. It is surreal, you know, that I'm a huge, huge fan and have been for a long time. So I am grateful.
And I think we're both really thrilled to be here doing an event for East City. East City is one of my favorite places in the region. If you all haven't been, please make time to come sometime. But I'm so excited to talk about this book, which, as you know, I really loved. I loved it so much. I gave it a gushing blurb. I thought we would just start. If you could just tell us a little bit about the book, maybe not just what the book is about, but also kind of the genesis of this book and sort of what's coming out tomorrow, because people might have seen it before elsewhere.
Yes. Well, first of all, your blurb, the email came through when I was like getting off of a plane, and I think I was getting off of a plane for Savor It, and I was like blubbering getting off this plane, and definitely made it a little bit of a scene, but it was just so lovely. So thank you. But this book, I originally self-published it in 2022, I think. Years of
This time.
blended. But it is actually one of the first things I thought about writing, because I went through a build and I specifically remembered thinking how funny would it be to have to read a book where people who didn't like each other had to do this and somehow fell in love. Because yeah, you don't end up not liking the person that you actually love a lot of the time in construction projects. Then when my books got bought up by a publisher, I was given the opportunity to add some bonus material, which sort of led to a pretty like arduous edit on top of it. It's very hard to edit a book that was you'd finished writing a long time before that. But it was just a good opportunity to add stuff to make the story a little bit stronger and give some flashback scenes and things like that. And then, oh gosh, yeah, then I finished that beginning of this year, and now I can't believe it's already November.
And now we get this fuller package of these two characters, who are, well, I'll get to the mess of them later, but tell us a little bit about Deacon and Lauren and what you love about them.
I think my favorite thing about writing each of them was just really leaning into them being a mess and having some baggage and having some insecurities that they each really knew how to press on. I think especially when you have a relationship when you're younger, I mean, you don't have a fully developed frontal lobe yet. And a lot of your priorities are different, and those insecurities feel a lot bigger when you are younger. You can carry those with you as you get older, but a lot happens where you just sort of start to accept yourself a little bit more. And I really just like this idea of them bringing out the worst in each other at first and the best in each other eventually, and kind of setting that against a renovation, because that's sort of what a renovation is like. You have to break down a whole bunch of shit and tear out a whole bunch of stuff before you can rebuild it into something better. I think that Deacon was an interesting character for me to write because I initially set out to make him very like golden retriever sunshine, and he didn't quite get there, but he is a lot more like, I think even in the book, I took the opportunity to sort of make him like a Doberman. So like, which we could have an in-depth conversation about certain like male main characters and what dog I picture them as, but we can stay on task too. But I just think like
maybe we
he
can
is
do that
kind
in
of,
the Q&A.
you know, floppy and dorky, but like also can be like hard and menacing and scary when he needs to be. But he's still like fun and flirty. Loren, I just really leaned into trying to write a character that like was honest, but in a messy way. Like I just said, I'm gonna write her as insecure and angry about it, and kind of take on this self-deprecating, like eventually she is self-aware, but even when we're self-aware, it doesn't always make it easy to stop ourselves from being the way that we naturally are for whatever reason. And so I just really wanted to write somebody who was like fiercely protective of her people and loved them, but it wasn't easy to get there for her. And it's not easy for her to trust people up front. I think that's an aspect of my own personality. Like sometimes I think no matter what you do, you take at least like a corner of your personality and put it into somebody and then kind of blow it up. So I just really had fun setting them against each other like that. And I don't know, like I think especially in a stressful situation like a construction project, it can bring out the worst in you, including the pettiest. And like I still have days where I'm very petty with my husband for no reason, like for a good reason.
There's always a reason.
There's always a reason.
Always a
Right
reason.
now, the reason is he's a man, and I just hold that against him. Unfortunately, I shouldn't. I'm trying not to, but yeah.
Well, one thing I really love about Loren, and like I really love this about like all of your heroines. I feel like you let them have moments of pettiness, sort of like unapologetic pettiness or frustration, or kind of aloofness or whatever. And I think all of us who are authors who write in this space know that it does sometimes feel like a risk to make your heroines have characteristics like that. And I'm kind of wondering, like, do you feel protective of a character like Loren and how audiences will respond to her?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's especially hard. I think, if we could talk all day about how sort of social media has made it so we're just hyper aware of people's feelings about certain characters, and how you can't, I don't think we're meant to see everything that we see from this perspective. But I do feel very protective, mainly because I know what it's meant to me to see characters like that in other books, and how they made me feel like it's okay that, sometimes I don't respond to the argument in a mature way. Sometimes it takes a lot to work up to the conversation, right? Like, we've all heard that saying where people are like, well, I just get frustrated when it's a book where everything could have been solved in one conversation. And I think that that's a little misleading, because if you think about it, that could be almost any book, but it's the getting to where those people want to have that conversation and feel comfortable having that conversation, because of whatever you've given them in their backgrounds, and between their history, if you've, done a second chance, or whatever their own insecurities are, or what's at stake for them, you've given them enough reason to have a trepidation about doing that. And so it's about like what external pressure you can put on them through the plot or whatever, and internal growth until they can finally get there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely feel protective. And I mean, I've heard Sarah McLean say a bunch of times, like, if it feels scary, you're probably doing something right. And I feel that way at least one point or another, almost specifically with my heroines, because they just mean so much to me. But a lot of the time with Loren, just because I wanted to show her getting there progressively, but it's okay that she had a moment where she like reverted, because that is realistic to me.
Yeah. And she's in
And I
such a
think,
pressure cooker, right? Like you
yes,
talked a little bit about renovation as kind of like a metaphor
yes,
for kind of tearing things down to the studs and starting over and things like that. And obviously, like the renovation itself is stressful, but obviously she's dealing with all these other pressures and stresses. And
yeah,
I love that she's allowed to, react in a very human way to those
yeah.
pressures. She doesn't react perfectly to everyone, and that's really realistic.
Thank you. And I like that. And I really like in stories where they don't, you don't, you don't think that they necessarily get to this point where they're perfectly healed and they're going to be perfect to each other from now on forever and ever. But you have put them through enough where you believe that they're going to go on to be able to meet other challenges later and get through the times where they're not always the nicest to each other later. And I like to show characters like that being loved even when they're not healed all the way. Because I don't think I'm not a believer of the fact that you have to be perfectly healed in order to love or be loved. You have to be trying for it, but imperfect people deserve love just as much. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you get to be like toxic forever, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I really liked, especially like with Loren, having her be a little angry and petty and all that sometimes, because I do think we let our male main characters get away with a little bit more. And I don't know, we forgive them a little easier for some reason. And I didn't want to have to do that. I wanted
Yeah.
Loren to get to be the one to
Yeah.
be
I
a
know
little
the reason.
angrier.
It's the patriarchy. Is that too,
Yes, you're very right. You
is
are
that too
correct.
much for this chat? Let's
Oh, oh yeah.
um tell me a little bit about, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how like this romance takes place. The backdrop of this romance is a renovation, but I really think that you're so good at like creating settings. I mean, I think, those of you in the chat who have read Savor It, that she does it with spoons, and that keeps on in Left of Forever, which is her next book in that series. But this book has like a really cool setting too, even beyond kind of the place they're renovating. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you get ideas for settings? How do you create them and make them? They feel very like cozy to me. So
Oh,
I was
thank
wondering if
you.
you could talk a little bit about that.
I really love, like, I love books that kind of give you a sense of place and, use the setting for whatever situation you need them to be in. But like when it came to Santa Cruz, a lot of it was because my mom had been living there at the time, and going there, I just thought this is like the weirdest, funkiest little town because it is a beach town, but it's also close to um Silicon Valley and the Bay Area and stuff. So it kind of just has its own vibe. Like there's a very like affluent area, and then there's like the whole like surfer crowd. And I love just good juxtapositions. I'm a sucker for them. Um in that case, it was just being able to imagine where they were, but and I'm always trying to put them in a situation where they're on page together as much as possible, um which sometimes can be to my detriment because I'll take so much time justifying where they get, and then they're together all the time from that point
The
on.
logistics, they'll kill you every time.
Yeah. um But I just saw somebody say Santa Cruz is such a weird place. It is. It's such a like has its own vibe. And I couldn't think of a book that had been set there. I think the boardwalk provided a fun, like the park and everything. And again, I can't stop my own metaphors. So I like the roller coaster aspect of things. I liked that I could have it be hot and cold there because they're hot and cold.
Mhm.
A lot of it just goes into that. Spoons was being entirely fictional. I got to just sort of pick and choose things from my favorite Pacific Northwest towns, and kind of did like a mishmash.
Mhm.
Um and tried to pay homage to a few things in there. I like made some of their that's sorry, my dogs are of course gonna be like pain right now.
They're adding something.
Yeah, they have commentary. Hey, stop it. Um, I think I Sage's middle name is Astoria, and that's one of the places that I drew inspiration from for it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope you're going to take this in the spirit I'm intending it. But as you were talking
Yeah.
about settings, you said like Santa Cruz is kind of a weird place and you like things a little weird or those juxtapositions.
Mhm.
And I think that your books often have sort of like weird moments
Yeah.
that end up either being incredibly like emotional or sexy or just very powerful, right? Like I think you're really unique at like
Yeah.
getting something weird and making it a really central part of the romance. And I wondered if you could like, do you have any moments like that from the co-op that
Oh
stand
gosh.
out?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that the being able to use the good vibrations scene.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody that hasn't read it yet, mild spoiler, like, she basically thinks that she's having some private time and like has her headphones on, then overhears that Deacon has come home and tries to act like nothing happened. He kind of makes her think nothing happened, and then all of a sudden as they're like eating together, he's turned on a song called Good Vibrations. And for me, I just really I catch myself doing it every time, but I love like things that can be really, really embarrassing and make them feel so vulnerable, leading to some like a little bit of an emotional breakthrough.
Mhm.
I love things like that where they're forced to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did it in Savor It from the jump with Fisher because he calls
The
911 on a
vacuum.
Roomba.
Yeah.
So, anything that just really forces people to be vulnerable, I'm a sucker for. And even it just kind of strips a layer away. I think I kind of did something similar with there's a scene right before they end up in the campground laundry room together, and it's like a fight, and she's very much feeling exposed and vulnerable, and he just kind of still goes after her and stays after her, and then it leads to something, a little bit of the tension
Yeah.
breaking.
I
Uh,
really, I really love that. I feel like, you were talking a bit about, you know, what Sarah always says about like kind of going to what you fear, right? Or
mhm.
like does it feel scary or whatever. And I think like writing like those weird human moments, like embarrassing moments or, you know, moments that you don't want anyone to like bear witness to or whatever. Um, I think it's really, really like lovely and unique that you lean into those. Like because I think for me, those things are fearful. That's
Yeah.
scary to write things like that.
Yes.
And I really love that about your books. And I can tell from the chat that other people they
Oh,
hear
good.
me and understand what I'm saying.
Oh, good. Thank you. I am constantly embarrassing myself. So maybe I just want to hope that it can lead to
Yes, it's
something lovely, I
inspiration.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this kind of leads me to one of the questions I definitely wanted to ask, which is, I think even though you do love a scenario like that, the good vibration scenario is a great example, or the Roomba vacuum. A lot of times your books really, they're kind of really walking the line between sort of like laughing and crying, right? Like
Yeah.
even though you are really adept at making situations in the book really funny and the banter very funny, you're also not afraid of like really big emotions in your books. And like I read romance for those big emotions. That's what I want when I read. So, that's one question I had for you is like when you're sitting down to write a book, and maybe you can talk about this with the co-op specifically, like what is it that you want your readers to feel? Like what's the sort of journey you want them to go on?
I mean, I like a bit I think that's why I love your book so much too, is that I love feeling a little bit of everything. Like I love that beginning trepidation when you're kind of like, ooh, how are they gonna get past this? Or like even so I've like when it's an author I trust and love, even when I'm like, oh, this is kind of like they're getting off to a really almost too good of a start. What's gonna happen? That's
Mhm.
gonna I just love all going on the full spectrum. And I think that for me, I want it to feel like a slice of life in that way, because to me, I don't think I live a particularly dramatic life, but I think that there are big feelings to be found in just in so many situations.
Yeah.
Whether it's brought on by, your family situations and how you were raised or unexpected things in your life coming up. Like that was kind of my thing with Savor It, is there were so many things that like there's so much just shit that happens in life that you could never hope to predict. And so the point is to just like savor what you can when it is good. And I think that for me, like obviously that's what goes into creating a good enough concept and plot so that there are going to be opportunities for those things, but also just being honest with the emotions along the way, like
Mhm.
not having the renovation go perfectly and having them like go in this very linear fashion where you know, everything, they take all the right steps. That to me, that would have been boring and unrealistic because that's just not how things happen. And I don't know a single person that has gone through a construction project where everything went according to plan. I don't know one single person. So, I just really like where you can find laughter one day and where the next day feels like garbage because I think that that's life and it all comes together in this like really beautiful tapestry in the end. And that's kind of what I aim for, I guess, with my books, because it's what my favorite books have always done.
Yeah, I think, when I first started reading romance, like I think one thing I was really drawn to was any romance that had a big enough kind of crisis moment, that like I would get to go through the cathartic feeling of like, oh my gosh, is this going to work out?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so this character is in so much pain. And like when I first started reading romance, I think the place where I felt like I got the most of that was like in really big dramatic moments, like there's a,
Yes.
I don't know,
They're gonna
in
duel at
Drinking of
dawn.
You. Yeah, Derek Craven thinks Sarah burned in the casino, and
Oh my God.
you know what I mean? Like
Can't bring that
but
up right now.
I really feel like there's something very special about being able to create that in like a pretty small, innocuous moment of life. Like one of my favorite moments in the co-op, and I don't want to spoil anything for any of you who've read it, but like I don't know, like at me when you do read it, is like, Deacon just kind of breaks down at how overwhelming his feelings for Lauren are, and like how he just doesn't want her to flirt with somebody else because it's so painful to him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come off as like possessive or
Yeah, he's just
inappropriate.
going
It's
through it.
just his feelings, right? And yeah, like how do you I guess what I want to say is like as a writer, how do you feel like you turn up the dial on scenes like that?
So especially for this book, because so much of it is conflict, I had to justify getting them to a point where they could be friends. And then they actually both care about each other so much that they are going to cherish that friendship. So, and I like when I'm almost like, oh my God, like why did we lose steam? What's going to happen? I like a little bit of that. So that's kind of what I tried to do with this one. It takes them a while to like be friends. They're attracted to each other. They had a relationship when they were younger that was a lot of like hooking up and a little more on the surface. And I think that especially like getting to write Lauren younger was kind of cathartic for me because I remember almost like as a younger woman going through a little bit of that where I had it in my head where I was concerned about being the perceived as the cool girl, to my dogs. Sorry.
All right. They're really, again, they're adding something to this.
Oh my gosh, I don't think there's anything out there. But I liked getting them to a point where it's like you can also see that they are gentle with each other and caring about each other. So they had to really get there and break down a little bit and sort of then like relieve some of the tension, but not go too far. And then I had to, get to a point where they build a genuine friendship. But I kind of like that little section where it almost feels like it loses steam for a minute because you're like, wait, they need to get together now. What's happening? They're being too careful with each other now. And so for me, how do you pull something realistic that doesn't feel too contrived?
Yeah.
That's huge for me. I don't like when something external just feels out of nowhere. I like when, again, it's a character driven romance. So I like when there's something that sparks that character to break down. And so for me, it was like, okay, there's stress, the stress of like the business aspect of things has just come up with Loren and that opportunity. And so that sort of pressed on this urgency for possibly having to sell the place. And they think for a bit that they do have to sell the place. And him not getting any sleep because they get stuck in a one bed situation the night before. They go to play a volleyball game, so they've done physical activity and he's barely got any sleep, and he's just kind of he's just a boy, and so he's tired and cranky and just stressed about it. And so then I just had to kind of justify him breaking down, and like obviously the way he's seeing Loren interacting with the other guy in the volleyball game and everything, to him it's like, she's gonna move on, we're gonna sell this place. Look at her flirting with him. She's gonna be, even though they're like technically married.
Yeah.
In my mind, the marriage aspect of things in this book was like, if you have partnership with somebody, you do have sort of an obligation over your head. How can you fall like in love under these stressful circumstances? Because I think that it can almost not, I'm trying to say this the right way. Sometimes having that can mean you almost feel safe to be your worst with somebody, because but you have to you have to choose not to. That's the whole point. No matter what, you have to choose not to. So doing that from a backwards way was why that came into play for me. And they're equally obligated to each other that way.
So I want to make sure that we have time to get to some of the great audience questions that are showing up. There's like one more thing that I want to ask you that I think if I don't, Destiny will be very upset with me. So what is your favorite new thing that you added to the co-op? Because obviously this is a really unique book in that it's gone through this revision. So what is your favorite new thing?
A lot of things. I'm really happy that I added the flashbacks. But I really love that I got to add the letter that they write at the end. Again, I'm just full of spoilers, but I feel like a lot of these people have probably read it. But writing the letter at the end, to show the real estate agents when they wanted to like back out of their agreement, and getting to just give a quick glimpse as to their grandmothers, how they met in that house, and why that building was important to them, and how it became a home. And getting to show that coming full circle for them was probably it's definitely one of the things I'm really happy I added.
Yeah, very special and moving.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that I ask some of these great questions that have shown up in the chat. I want to ask a couple of questions that have come up about your writing. We've got one person who's asked if you plan a lot in advance, or if you kind of come up with the plot as you go, or I guess I would add, are you kind of a blend of the two?
I'm definitely a blend. I'm waiting for the book where I feel like I have some sort of process. It has changed every single time for me so far. I've really tried to become more and more of a planner, which means I do spend a lot of time just thinking and just being very selective about just what sentences I'm writing. And so in a way, it's made me, trying to become more of a planner and a plotter has made me a slower writer. But I do think once I finally have the angle and the direction I want to go in, I get off to a quicker start. But every single time it has changed. And even when I think something is going to go in this exact direction, it doesn't. So
yeah. Somebody else has asked a bit about your character development. Courtney, you've asked about, now I'm not going to say this right. Do you say it like Enneagram? How do you say that?
Oh yeah, Enneagram. Yeah.
Okay, I need to admit to everybody here that I've like I've only ever taken one personality test in my life. So I guess
The first time I took an Enneagram test, I thought, great, I guess I'm a sociopath because none of this doesn't, why am I a little bit of everything? Look
well,
out. I was so mad at it. Like I don't actually know myself at all. But
I just had Sarah McLean read my chart one time, and
yeah,
that's the only information I've taken in at this point.
you're a Virgo, so
Yes, yeah.
that's very
So tell me a little bit about like
um,
your character development. Does anything like that contribute to your
yes.
character development?
I do. I actually specifically like using the Enneagram to start, um, mainly because it helps me sort of figure out a key motivation for them. But I try not to stick to too closely to an exact archetype because I think that that can make your character feel too much like a character. I don't want like
I know what you mean.
yeah, and then from there a lot of the times I will even think up like a star sign and things like that. It for me that's mostly to make sure they stay consistent throughout. Like how can they grow but also stay true to who they are, like having somebody be shy and quieter and all this, but then be the like loudest person in at the party and like a full I don't know that's not necessarily doesn't feel like the natural way to grow.
So that's like that's kind of like a brainstorming tactic for you as you're
Yeah,
thinking about your characters.
I do more of that than plotting.
Yeah,
So,
I do. Yeah, I do a lot more character work than
yeah,
plotting too. Because if you get it right, or if you know them well enough, you know what they'll do in
yeah,
whatever situation you put them in, which is
exactly.
kind of interesting. Somebody has asked a good question about one of your early books. So what was the process of writing the comedy for Funny Feelings? So how did
Oh
you
gosh.
approach writing a fictional comedian? Where did you draw
Oh
those bits
gosh.
from? This is from Becky.
Oh man. Well, I have went through a period where I watched a ton of stand up. And I every once in a while I still do, but most of the time these days I watch the ones that I've already watched a bunch of times. Um, I don't want to get dark, but now sometimes I find jokes like I can't find it funny anymore. Anyway, but I uh I watched a lot of stand up. Um, but I had uh like a notes app thing on my phone of like what I think would be a fun way to warm up a crowd and how I would get like I just had jokes, dumb jokes in my phone, a lot of them. Um, I had this idea like based on like seeing a mom's group, like a group of moms out and about, like having an insane night out, and they, all seemed different. And I tried to find a way to like work that into Farley's routine. But for me, like even when it came to that book, there's writing stand up. I mean, having humor in a book already it's flat, it's two-dimensional. So reading it is different than watching it, hearing it, hearing the inflection while somebody's making funny gestures and a funny face. You can't write all that and describe all that in a book because then it's just not, it doesn't read as funny. So for me, a lot of that book was how do I make you believe that they're funny and that they can be comedians by showing how they interact with each other and the way they act. Less so of her on a stage because it won't read as funny, and to also make you like believe in like why comedy is important, why it's like a form of
Yeah.
art, how it serves a purpose and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what from your own, so Sophia's asked a question about kind of your own Loren's personality that maybe
Oh.
aspects of her personality that you maybe identify with, but you kind of touched a little bit on this about how each one of your characters has like a little piece of you. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that? How does your own, how do
I'm a
you
huge
inform
bitch.
your
No,
character?
I think that I have a tendency to, when I'm feeling very vulnerable or very, especially like just embarrassed about something, my default can be to close down and to be a little bit angry and mean about it. Just because it's either that or I make a joke at my own expense, like, oh,
Mhm.
may just tell you the most traumatic thing about me and then LOL at the end. Oh, all my LOLs these
A
days are,
classic millennial move. I do it too.
yeah, all my LOLs these days are a little dark,
Very
but
dark. Yeah.
I think definitely I lash out. The most I have in common with Lauren is that I kind of lash out against my own insecurities, and I get kind of mad at myself about them, and I don't like I will get close to crying and close to mad when I'm feeling the most embarrassed.
Isn't crying like the frustration cry is the worst kind of
The
cry,
worst.
isn't it?
It is
It's
the
the
worst.
worst.
And because it doesn't, it's like the one kind of cry that like doesn't help anything.
No, there's no catharsis to it.
No. You can be
Terrible.
sad and really let it all out, and that there is something there.
Yeah.
Like you get it kind of, you purge it a little bit, but when you're frustrated, it's
Yeah.
just,
It's the
it's just,
worst.
it's
The
just leaking out
worst.
of you, and but it's all staying in there.
And then you're just frustrated with yourself for crying.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And I'm just
Yeah.
frustrated that I'm crying.
What's
I'm
going
annoyed that I'm
on?
crying.
Yeah. We've turned this a little therapeutic.
Yeah, sorry.
So let's get lighter in here for a minute.
Hey.
Tell me, somebody asked this question at the very beginning based on something we talked about. Let's talk about our heroes as
Okay.
dogs.
Okay.
Um,
Oh God. All right.
Tell me about
Well,
each one of your heroes
and what
as
kind of dogs they are.
dog breed. Yeah.
Okay.
Or the
So
ones that stand out, maybe.
I think I actually like assigned certain dogs to all of them. To me, I think that Deacon is definitely kind of like a Doberman, like a kind of a floppy faced
Mhm.
Doberman, like
Mhm.
big and handsome, but and can be kind of scary, but also like if you've ever seen a Doberman playing around, they're floppy and kind of goofy. So
Mhm.
to me,
Mhm.
he is like a Doberman. Looks like he could kill you, is a cinnamon roll, that whole, that whole thing.
Right. Mhm.
Somebody said Fisher, I picture as a terrier. Come on,
Tara
put some
doesn't like
respect
that.
on Fisher's name. I'm just kidding. Who did I pick? I think I picked for Fisher, I think I said he was like some kind of a Dutch shepherd. Like same thing. Again, he can look kind of scary, but probably isn't unless, but he needs to be active. It's the hair
Mhm.
and earring. Okay. I respect
It's fair. It's
I
fair.
respect that. Yeah. The let's see. I think I think Fisher was some kind of Dutch shepherd. And then Henry, what did I say Henry was? He was like a Great Pyrenees or something. Like no, that was Silas. I said Silas is like a Great Pyrenees. He just is soft and fluffy, which he's not anytime soon. So he's not
Yeah,
out.
you should keep that
And
under wraps.
then Ellis was a Kangal shepherd, like one of those really scary livestock dogs. So
So
like very, very
specific.
sweet
Yeah.
to his little flock,
Yeah.
but looks very scary. And if anything comes,
Yeah. He's ready.
he's ready. Yes,
Well,
I got embarrassingly specific about it when I did this. And who did I said something great for Henry too. I'm gonna have to go on my threads now and
we'll
find
probably
it.
come back. But let's talk about Ellis for just a minute because
Okay.
I know we're like like, I know we're probably going to get interrupted here at
At
the
all.
end. So like, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about Ellis Bird, who is the hero of your next book.
Yes.
So after you all buy a copy of the co-op from East City and then read it, you should pre-order Left of Forever, which is Tara's next book, which I really love. So can you tell everybody a bit about Ellis Bird and what to look forward to about Left of Forever?
Oh my gosh. Yes, he was a joy to write, mainly because I really like when men suffer. I no, I um oh, somebody said Left of Forever. Oh, somebody read it already. Must be a
Yay.
librarian or
I think it's starting to circulate out there.
oh my gosh. Oh yay. Okay, so um he has a mustache. I used the
It's a
adage
mustache.
like he's not a boy obsessed, he's a man determined. And there's a thing in the beginning that sort of sparks this realization and makes it so he's like, okay, this is kind of my last chance. I'm gonna try to see if she'll take this chance with me. But he is just um somebody I had a lot of fun writing because I think that he exemplifies how we have certain expectations of ourselves and can almost get in our own way. And that can be even when we're good to our people and because we're trying our best to be what they need, sometimes that can make it almost hard for our people to like accept that. If you're not willing to show your hurt and your imperfections and again, like this whole idea of being able to communicate with people. If you haven't been given if you haven't felt safe to do that, and if you felt like you've had all this responsibility to be the one to be the steady thing in everybody's life, you can get to a point where you learn to suppress that a little bit. I mean, I've experienced that just in my own life when, I was a too young of a mom, and you get so determined to like be good at this. I need to be everything I'm supposed to be for this person, instead of like my thing with my kids now is sometimes I just apologize when
Yeah.
I fuck up, and I've said to my kids before, this is my first time being a mom too.
Mhm.
So like I'm figuring this out too. Like
Yeah.
and I think that's I think that's more impactful sometimes than putting that sort of expectation on yourself. So I really enjoyed writing him and his determination, and just a real sucker for longing and pining.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I loved doing that with
Well,
him
you all
especially.
are gonna love this book.
Ah.
So it's the next one to look forward to. And I read Left of Forever this past weekend, and it really got me through uh got me through a difficult time. And so that's actually what I wanted to. I know we're almost like running out of time, so I wanted to kind of like end on that. And I hope those of you in the chat will chime in as well. I think probably a lot of us here, Tara and I both, I'm sure, like romance is very important to us in
Yes.
terms of our uh, continued kind of
Coping.
existence in this world and
Yeah.
being able to navigate it. And so I kind of want to hear if you're reading anything that's keeping you going right now. And those of you in the chat, feel free to share as well. This is a nice night for us to have a little connection after a difficult time. So you
I
reading
read
anything?
that Katie Wild book. I read that last night during a
Oh,
nice little
the
insomnia bout.
Midsummer, is
Loved
it
it.
called the
Adored
Midsummer
it.
Bride?
Yes, The Midsummer Bride. I
Everybody, if you're looking for
absolutely,
fantasy, Midsummer
yes,
Bride, Katie Wild,
yes.
it's great.
I'm gonna read like all the others now. Other than that, I have firmly been in my reread. You know that I've read Luck of the Draw. I don't know how many times, but I love rereading that book. I notice something new every time I reread it, and those are my favorite types of reads, and I think I've said this, I think I've had this conversation with you before, but my extra favorite thing about your books is that like when I read them, I love those characters so much, and I am, I want them both. I love them both, but I'm also like, that's her man. I feel, and
That's the best kind of
he
romance.
wouldn't look twice at me because he's so obsessed with her. And I love that so much in a
Yeah.
romance. So, and
Well,
I feel that way.
I feel that way about all your couples
Thank
too.
you. Thank you.
And I'm really thrilled to look in the chat and see what you all are reading as well. It's like, it is life affirming and book affirming to see you all out
is.
there reading and telling us what you love. So, Tara, thank you so much for talking
Oh
to
my
me. I'm a big fan.
I'm a huge fan of yours. Thank you so much.
I'm just fangirling both of you. Love it.
Oh my God.
We're
Okay.
a fan of you too, Destiny.
Yes, we are.
Thank you all. Okay, I have to ask a question.
Yeah.
Of you, Tara, which is you talked about the dogs for your
Yeah.
characters, but I
Yes.
want to know if you have like a favorite book where you thought of what that male main character
God.
would be, because I know you have, and I need to know it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I really feel like Reese Winterbourne in Marrying Winterbourne is like one of those like giant, what are they called? Cane Corso dogs.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where he's actually such a simp. Like he's just so floppy, and so he slept next to her sock. He sleeps next to her sock so that he remembers that he like convinces himself it was real. But he probably, I do think he would kill somebody. So
Yeah. Reese Winterbourne cares about one thing, and
Yes.
it's whether Helen is happy.
yes,
Period.
exactly.
Period.
Yes.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Oh,
So yes, I have thought about it before.
Oh, we know. We know.
Oh God.
Well, thank you all so much. This was an utter delight. And thank you
Oh my
everyone for being here. And I was trying to swiftly take down some of your recs and maybe put them on ECV stories so that you guys can, get each other's recommendations. And
Oh, yeah.
again, Kate, Tara, oh, were you going to say something, Tara?
No, I was gonna say I'll go look at the recommendations
Me
too.
too.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, let's get those in there. As Kate mentioned, you can get a copy of the co-op from City Bookshop as well as pre-order Left to Forever, which I also can confirm is here
Oh my
to
gosh.
emotionally destroy you in the best way. In the best way.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, honestly, and I hope you guys have a beautiful evening or midnight, whatever it is where you are, and
Yes.
know that we are sending you hugs.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Sending everybody hugs. And thank you again so much.
Love y'all. Bye.
Y'all.
Bye.
Bye.